My name is Richard Mack, and I'm the former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona. The county sheriff is the only elected law enforcement officer in the United States, and certainly in his county. So he's the only official that reports directly to the power source. In other words, he's not a bureaucrat. He wasn't appointed by some other body. He reports directly to we, the people. And so he is sovereign in that regard because he reports directly to the other sovereigns. And that's why the sheriff is the ultimate authority. He's not a bureaucrat from Washington, D.C. The President of the United States cannot tell your sheriff what to do. And so certainly none of the other auxiliary departments underneath the President can tell the sheriff what to do, and that includes the IRS, the EPA, OSHA, FBI, DEA. Any of those agencies cannot tell the sheriff what to do. But when they're in his sovereign jurisdiction, he can tell them what to do. The question is, will he? It's really alarming how many peace officers, policemen, law enforcement officers, sheriffs, chiefs of police, who have actually taken an oath of office to uphold and defend, protect and preserve the United States Constitution, and then when you present them with that thought or idea that that's exactly what they should be doing, they claim that it isn't their job to uphold and defend the Constitution, that which they've already sworn an oath to do. And so that's what really I find very disturbing. But I think it's the evolution that has taken place in our country today, and also it's a result or a consequence or a branch of what's wrong with America. America is off track. We have replaced our Constitution, which was the bulwark of our freedom in this country, with political agendas, political selfishness, and ultimately political correctness has replaced our Constitution. And so is it any wonder that we're so far off track? And my message is law enforcement owns part of that problem, and we need to correct it. No, the governor and the sheriff are pretty much equal. The governor is the sovereign leader over the state. The sheriff would probably supersede the governor within his county because he is the ultimate protector of the people within his jurisdiction. He can't let anybody violate the Constitution in his county. He cannot allow anyone to violate the rights of the people within his jurisdiction. It doesn't matter if it's the governor, or the president, the IRS, FBI. He is in charge of protecting the constitutional freedoms of his jurisdiction. The governor, oversees the state, and she is, or he, very powerful, and they are equal in some ways and have the same responsibility to the people who elect them, and that is to uphold and defend their Constitution. I was probably the first sheriff in the United States to sue the federal government for doing that very thing, for promulgating a bill or law or statute that directly commandeers the sheriff for federal bidding. As I look back, I'm really grateful that we won a case at the United States Supreme Court, and I still have yet to see if throughout American history that there's been another case won at the Supreme Court by a sheriff, by a sitting sheriff. Sheriff Prince and I ended up taking this case all the way to the Supreme Court. We won on this very issue of state sovereignty, local autonomy, and the power of the county. And so when the or any other legislative body passes a law, a supposed law, that forces the sheriff to violate his oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution, what does he do? And Judge Roll, in my case, actually said that Sheriff Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the act. And I think he nailed it right on the head there. That's the key question. What does all of law enforcement and what do all the sheriffs across the country do when a statute forces them to violate their constitutional oath? Well, I think it's easy. You keep your word to your oath. That's the ultimate law. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. Nothing supersedes the Constitution. So let's put it back in its proper place. And I would say there was a sheriff from Montana that did not join the lawsuit who I agree with. He did it the right way. He just said no. He said, we're not doing the Brady bill in this county. And that was, I believe, Sheriff Nixon. And as I look back, I wish that that's what we had done. After looking back at my lawsuit and the subsequent victory in the U.S. Supreme Court, that I wish the sheriffs in Arizona had simply all signed a letter unitedly and sent it back to Washington, D.C., to the White House, and CC it over to the Congress and the Justice Department, letting them know we're not doing the Brady bill in Arizona, and thank you very much for your efforts, but it won't be applied here. Yeah, that was a very powerful case, disavowed by the judge in the case, by the way, but it was a requirement of the settlement in the case that Sheriff Mattis devise a way to make sure that the federal government couldn't come in and do what they did to the Castañeda family, trying to arrest them. Well, they did arrest them at 1 o'clock in the morning for being illegal immigrants. And of course, nobody's trying to do that now when we have them all over the place, but the thing was, the Castañedas required that as part of their settlement. And Dave Mattis actually came up with the idea, and they were obeying it. The federal government was obeying it. And other counties in Wyoming also practiced the same policy. It wasn't a law, but it was a policy as established through a court order, or a court settlement, I should say. I don't believe they're doing it too much now. And so we've got a lot of work to do. Well, first thing I would love to see it be the county commissioners. The county commissioners should be supporting their sheriff with proper legislation or resolutions to have him enforce the Constitution. So if they pass a law saying federal government, let's say they have this H.R. 45 that Barack Obama is trying to shove down our throats right now, to have a national registry for firearms and firearm owners in this country, and to have a national licensure granted from Washington, D.C. to keep and bear arms, which is already guaranteed in the Second Amendment. Let's say that that is really going to be pushed, and the federal government is going to come out and perhaps confiscate weapons and or ammunition. So what does the local authority do? Well, the county commission passes a resolution saying that there will be no more federal gun control in this county, and the sheriff enforces it. And so when the feds come in, the sheriff stands. He shouldn't need that resolution, but it would be nice to have it, because the Second Amendment is there, and he's already sworn, we're back to that again, he's already sworn an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, of which the Second Amendment is a part, is a key integral part of the freedom as established by our founders. And why was the Second Amendment put there in the first place? Well, that's what we need to all understand. The intent of the Founding Fathers on the Second Amendment was so that the people of this country would have the final say in controlling their government. And the ultimate power of the Second Amendment is that the people remain in charge to be able to fight off abusive government. That's why the Second Amendment's there. So yeah, and the other one that really needs to back the sheriff in what's going on is the county attorney. It's not essential to have those others. The sheriff can do it on his own. He doesn't need to ask permission of anybody in the county or across the country. He doesn't need to ask the barber down on Main Street or anyone else how he's going to keep his oath of office. He's bound by his word, and he's also bound by the Constitution. Department of Homeland Security should have absolutely nothing to do with your sheriff's office. Absolutely. Let me say that again. Absolutely nothing. Okay? Homeland Security has just been around for a few years, since 9/11, of course. And right now we have Janet Napolitano, who used to be the governor of Arizona, saying that veterans and people who believe in Ron Paul and people who believe in the Constitution and people who believe in the Bible and who believe in gun rights are all dangerous and pose some sort of danger to the federal government. Well, I guess she might be right. If the government's out of control and tyrannical and abusive, well, yeah, then she ought to be worrying, I guess. But otherwise, these people and those groups are extremely peaceful. And she even mentioned, I think, the libertarians, which all libertarians have to swear an oath of non-aggression and non-violence. So how did they make that list? The sheriff shouldn't be taking money from the feds in the first place, and then they don't have to worry about that. And if the states would wake the heck up, and I really do mean wake the heck up, if they would stop sending our money to Washington, D.C., then Washington, D.C. won't have our money to hold over us anymore. So it's just, I don't know, maybe it's all too simple, but federal government doesn't create money, they take money. And they take money from the states and from the people. So why do the states sit here and worry about every $10 they send to Washington, D.C., they get $1 back? Well, keep your $10 and you won't have to worry about any of that. Yeah? Well, the citizens are the boss of the sheriff, and so they need to let the sheriff know what they want him to do. Even then, if 99.9% of the people in his county ask him to violate the Constitution, he can't do it. No matter what, he has to keep his word. This is not a democracy. In a democracy, that would be okay. The rule of the majority would win out. That's democracy. In a constitutional republic, the rights of the individual, even if it's just one person in his county, must be protected. And so the people form, the M word, the militia, or the posse. And if you look up the word militia in the dictionary, Google the definition of militia. It's the same thing as the local posse, which the sheriff has had the power to call out the people and actually order the people to come out in helping him in the execution of the law and keeping the peace. And that's where the people really come out. Back to your question about how can citizens support their sheriffs. Well, he works for you. You've got to read this and then take it to him and say, you know what? There was a sheriff who sued the federal government and won a case on the issue of states' rights. We'd like you to consider this. And it's only 50 pages, so he can read this while he eats a donut. Yeah.
Did you see that?
Hey, I was in law enforcement 20 years, I know. The Mack report was absolutely absurd. Anyone thinking that that's okay has got a screw loose somewhere, and they call us crazy. Well, we mean no other individual on the face of the planet any harm. This is a peaceful movement. This is a movement to restore our Constitution, yes, and we will stand fast in that, and we're not going to move backward for anybody. But we mean no harm to absolutely anyone else. We don't want to hurt anybody. We certainly don't want a fight or a war or anything of that nature. But we're not giving up our guns, and we're not giving up our ammunition, and we're not giving up our children, and we're not giving up our religions, and we're certainly not going to give up any more of our freedom and liberty. And if you really study what's going on in our country, you'll come face to face with the conclusion that I put also in the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, the best book on the planet right now about freedom, that every citizen in this country should read.
I agree.
The bottom line of this whole book is that it presents this thesis of the book that the greatest threat to constitutional, God-given American liberty is our own federal government. The worst thing that can happen in this country is for a county sheriff to be corrupt. They're really hard to remove, and because he is corrupt, he has lots of people in his pocket, or he's in other people's pockets. I don't think that happens an awful lot, but I know for a fact that it does happen, and is happening now. So some states don't even have recall laws. The only way he can be removed in some states if you convict him of a felony. Well, that's happened a few times. There are recall laws, and I suggest people use them, or you find a place to live with a sheriff who is honest and keeps his oath of office. But to the sheriffs who are corrupt, luckily it's a small percentage. But what we need all sheriffs to do is to come to the realization that the oath of office is their ultimate goal and purpose and duty. And if you're just going to take the oath as a ceremony to get your picture in the paper at the beginning of your term, then you've violated the Constitution, and you've violated your oath of office, and you've violated the trust of the people. A recall is just a signature drive where people in the county sign a petition to have another election. And the sheriff still is on that ballot, or any other corrupt elected official is still on that ballot, but it puts them up for another election and gives the people another chance to kick them out. The Real ID Act is one of many coming out down the pike in Washington, D.C. Let's go back a little bit too to the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does bestow, without question, and it would take any high school student maybe 5 minutes to find the intent of the Founding Fathers. They would have to try to go find it because they're not taught the Second Amendment and from the intent of the Founding Fathers in schools. I've been a government teacher in high school before, and I know it does not teach the truth. Most of the government books in this country school system do not teach the truth about our foundation or about our government or about the Founding Fathers. But there's a lot of information out there, and you can find it. But the federal government's trying to force more gun control down our throats. They're trying to force this national ID down our throats. That's going to have also a part to play with gun control. And I simply don't trust any of it. But the overall socialistic agenda that is saturating Washington, D.C. politics right now, it's all unconstitutional. Government is not here to feed us, to clothe us, to take care of us, to educate us, to basically take care of us. And let me warn you, friends, if you want the federal government to take care of you, they will. And that should scare you to death. But the National ID Act, all that stuff, H.R. 45, the bottom line is that there's already about 22,000 gun control laws in this country, all of which are unconstitutional. Every one of them. The people have the right to keep and bear arms, and what gun I own, and how I get it, and how much ammo I have, or how many guns I have. Guess what? I don't want to be rude here, but it's none of your business, and it certainly is none of my government's business. The sheriff can refuse any order or policy or suggestion or law or anything else from Washington, D.C. or from the state capitol if it violates the rights of the people. He is the ultimate check and balance. And he usually has a gun. Freedom of the press, freedom, free speech, it's all combined together. And a lot of times these same groups that have been attacked are the ones that are the most vocal. So that's why Janet Napolitano's coming after them, because they have to label you as something so people won't listen to you. And of course, who jumps on board on that attack, well, it's usually ABC and CBS and NBC and CNN and, you know, what are these, government-owned media outlets? You know, the reason that we have freedom of the press is not so we can read about LeBron James in the sports page of the newspaper. It's so that the press actually is a check and balance against overzealous government also, to make sure that the people will always hear the truth about what's really going on. Well, that's not happening anymore. Yeah, they've actually done some of that in the past. I think it was the Wetlands Act back in the 90s, and there was a big rain in somebody's ranch or something, and it formed a little pond, and the government came in and took over this guy's land because there was a pond on his land now. There's been so many ridiculous things. The Endangered Species Act has caused a lot of stupidity from Washington, D.C. The EPA has done a lot of stupid things in the name of supposedly protecting our environment. Cost a lot of jobs. If you want to see where most jobs have been lost in this country in the last 20 years, put it right at the doorstep of the EPA. And the Wetlands Act, and now that they think they own all the water, Governor Symington back in the 90s also showed the federal government when they couldn't balance their budget, and there was no budget for a while when Bill Clinton was in office. Well, Governor Symington said, well, fine, we don't need you guys. We'll run our own Grand Canyon. It's ours anyway. We don't need you guys running our Grand Canyon. Well, it's the same principle. The governors of this state, of every individual state, and then the sheriffs and county boards of commission and board of supervisors need to let the federal government know, you don't own the water in this state. This is a sovereign state. We are in charge within the borders of this state. We are in charge, not you. The states created you. You do not supersede the creator. The federal government didn't even exist when we started the Revolutionary War. It was formed afterwards. So when we fought for freedom, it was for state sovereignty, not for a strong central government. One place where Alexander Hamilton was wrong. The 10th Amendment is the basis of my lawsuit. The 10th Amendment is where it guarantees the power and sovereignty to the states or to the people, which also shows the power the people have. And to paraphrase the 10th Amendment, this is really what the 10th Amendment says. It's the Founding Fathers telling all future generations of government, especially in Washington, D.C., that just in case you want to get really creative, or if you think we forgot something, you can't do that either. That's the 10th Amendment. Well, usually you can be certain if Washington, D.C.'s passed another law, it's going to cost taxes and jobs. And then they'll turn around and create a welfare state for those people to collect more benefits and entitlements. It's absolutely amazing that the icon of the Democratic Party was John F. Kennedy, and he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Anybody remember that principle? Anywhere in government, show me a Democrat. I mean, even and a Republican for that matter in Washington, D.C. that believes that principle. Government is not here to take care of us. Government is here to protect our borders. Oh, man, they've done a bang-up job there. But no, it's so off. It's so opposite of what it was intended to be that it's absolutely scary. Well, first of all, he has the duty to protect the businesses that are offering alternative health to citizens. Those businesses have a right to exist. Let me, for the record, make this very clear. I use them. Right now, if you look at the evidence, doctors killed by making mistakes of prescriptions and other mistakes, about 125,000 people a year. Guns supposedly are only involved in about 20,000 such deaths. Why aren't we registering doctors or going after doctors? But no, we've actually strengthened the FDA and given the FDA more power, and they don't have any power to begin with, but they keep stealing it and usurping it. But they're actually going after some of these herbal companies or whole food companies. Most of these alternative supposed medications are simply whole foods. They're just concentrated. And I use them all the time, and so does my wife and family. And we will continue to do so. And for anyone to say that these companies should be shut down so that we can have more chemotherapy and more drugs shoved down our throat, like Prozac and Zoloft and all these other things that are destroying our children, is ridiculous. The sheriff is not a puppet for the courts or for the legislatures. He is his own boss. Again, who does he report to? He reports to the people. And he has to weigh that above all other elected officials or public officials who are going after a citizen in his county. Doesn't matter if it's the IRS or a judge or whatever. The judge cannot expect and should not expect the sheriff to go along with an unconstitutional order. In fact, no one, not the military or law enforcement, can be held accountable for disobeying an unlawful order. Oath Keepers! Yeah, Oath Keepers has been around for only about 2 or 3 months, and I got to know Stuart Rhodes and Dave Freeman with Oath Keepers, and the relationship that we have is an obvious one and an easy one. I've been preaching about the oath of office for about 20 years, and now they've made it a national campaign. And I'll tell you what, when I was in Lexington and we had the oath ceremony where we all, about a crowd of about 400 citizens, law enforcement, retired military, current military, all of us joining together, raising our arms and taking an oath, or retaking or reaffirming our oaths to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. I'll tell you what, it brought a tear to my eye. It was one of the most powerful moments I've ever participated in. You know, you can't contract out what the Army is supposed to do and what they're constitutionally supposed to be doing to protect, and then you kind of give carte blanche to a private company to do that which the military is supposed to be doing. You know, that really puts the government and the military in a precarious position, and we have seen what happens when you do that. Who do these people, a private company, who do they report to? You know, who's their boss? If they violate their contract, who's responsible? The government or that company? Or, you know, we get mad at them, or what do we do to them? Fire them, stop the contract, take the money back, sue them? All that stuff's not part of a military operation. It's the same thing with Andrews International or anybody else. They can work for private companies, but they shouldn't be hired by government. You know, they're a private company. Their allegiance is not to the American people or to the Constitution. Their allegiance is to make money. They're a private company, and I don't mind companies making money. I totally support the capitalist society that we're supposed to have. Capitalism works a lot better than socialism or communism. Well, I think the ultimate protection that the sheriff will give his people is from other government agencies that want to run roughshod over his people in his county. We saw what happened in Ruby Ridge, Idaho. We saw what happened in Waco when sheriffs stand back and trust the federal government. The federal government doesn't have a very good track record. The IRS has a horrible track record. So, you know, the last thing you want to do is trust government. In fact, Patrick Henry warned us that we should never trust government officials, but shackle them down with the perimeters and chains of the Constitution, as he said. And Thomas Jefferson said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And that's the ones that are supposed to be careful are us, we, the people. It's our government. It's what We do. This is us. And so we have got to be really careful. And the sheriff is the ultimate protector, again, of the people, to protect them from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Doesn't matter where they come from. Okay? They come from Washington, D.C. or the State House or whatever. And so martial law and all this, the sheriff, if he's organized enough and has his posse ready to go, his armed posse ready to go anywhere in this country, then FEMA and those from the federal government who want to institute martial law, they can tell him, go somewhere else. There's not going to be enough manpower to do all this anyway. If they want to do martial law from Hawaii to Bangor, Maine, there's absolutely not enough manpower. It has to be local people. So the sheriffs are going to be asked to be part of the martial law. And the sheriffs can say, no thanks, go somewhere else. We don't need you here. We've got it under control. The sheriffs really have got to exercise some real leadership and planning on that one. Well, Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Phoenix, Arizona has already set that example for all of us. The last count, I think he has about 5,000 on his posse. When I was sheriff, I had about 125. Our search and rescue, our entire team was all posse members, all volunteers. But they were excellent. And we can exercise, the sheriff can exercise his authority to call out volunteers however he wants. And he can save the citizens a lot of money in doing so. UN troops being in the United States, even for little exercises, even for an exercise, is something we should all be very concerned about. We had them in Arizona back when I was sheriff, and they weren't in my county, but they were in a neighboring county, and we got pictures of them and asked why they were there, and they said they were there on a peacekeeping mission. Well, I thought we were already at peace in Arizona and the United States. Why do we need the UN? Let me tell you right now, this mentality and the propaganda that's going around that the counties are subject to the state legislature, and that the state legislature is subject to the federal government, and that the federal government somehow is subject to this national government called the United Nations. That is absolutely atrocious. It's stupid. It's not true. It's not there. The UN has no authority over the United States. They have no authority over your sheriff. They have no authority over you unless you give it to them. And the first thing we need to do is get our country's sovereignty back and kick the United Nations out or dissolve it. And we shouldn't be in the United Nations. The United Nations was first propagandized as a means for keeping peace throughout the world, and since they've been there, there's been more poverty, which they said they were going to stop, which is absurd, but there's been more wars under the tutelage of the United Nations than at any other time in the history of the world. I think the bottom line on FEMA during Katrina is a typical example of what you get when you turn things over to the Washington, D.C. New Orleans and the state of Louisiana should have been prepared and should not have depended on FEMA to do anything. And they did, and they all paid for it dearly. And we're in a dire situation if we think that FEMA is going to take care of us in this country. They don't have a good track record. Man, here's another bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. that doesn't have a good track record. The IRS doesn't have one. The FBI doesn't have one. It just goes on and on and on, folks. So I think the warning from Ronald Reagan when he said that government isn't the solution to the problem, government is the problem, was so true, and we need to wake up to that. Well, the IRS had a hearing before Congress in 1998 where Jennifer Long and other employees, current agents of the IRS, testified that the IRS routinely fabricates evidence against citizens who they know could not adequately defend themselves, who couldn't afford to financially defend themselves against the IRS. So the end result is, through this criminal act, is that people would just pay the money. And so what happened to the IRS after that? After solid proof was given to Congress, who is supposed to oversee the IRS, what did the IRS do? Did they investigate? Did they fire anybody? Did they put anybody in jail for all these illegal and criminal acts? No, Congress said that we want IRS offices open on Saturday, and we want the IRS to be more user-friendly. That's like telling the mafia to be more user-friendly, except the mafia has a little more scruples than the IRS. Well, the EPA is mentioned in my case on page 15, and if you read Mack versus U.S., the EPA was ruled to be unconstitutional in the 1970s, and yet they have gotten more power since then. And I think that's a typical example, just like the ruling in my case of Mack versus U.S. That ruling has been ignored. And it says that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction, and that the states and the counties and local jurisdictions actually standing up to the federal government and preventing incursions from the federal government is one of the Constitution's, quote, structural protections of liberty, end quote. And it's all right there in the case. So the federal government doesn't have authority over us unless we give it to them. The Federal Reserve is probably the biggest mistake that our country has made, along with the IRS, but they kind of go together, hand in hand. They're one and the same. But the Federal Reserve is not federal. It's owned by private banks. There is no question that the Federal Reserve is owned by private banks. It's not federal. So how did we do that? Congress, you've got a lot of work to do. And yet, our representatives in Washington, D.C. pretend that it has something to do with the government and that it's all proper. It's not. You know, I've been asked about 9/11 a lot. The bombings of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. What happened then was certainly a national disaster and a catastrophe, and I hated watching that. I mean, it tore my heart out. The bottom line is, I'm not going to say that I know what happened, because I don't. But what I do know is the report from the federal government is not true. And I want, more than anything, I want to call right now for an independent investigation so that we get to the bottom of it. Not another government investigation or whitewash. An independent investigation of what happened at September 11th, 2001. And I'm volunteering to be part of that. Hemp has about 2,000 domestic uses, from oil to paper to fuel. Fuel. You make fuel out of hemp. Hemp was made illegal when they made marijuana illegal. Hemp has no THC in it. It's not narcotic. And it could literally save the economy of this country. And if government officials are so concerned about global warming, then why not harvest hemp? Hemp could solve half of those problems that they're crying about all the time. Plus, the medical use of marijuana is something that absolutely should be explored. And for everybody to say, in government and police alike, oh, people just want to smoke marijuana because it's fun, or they want to get high on it. I know people who that absolutely is not true about. And if somebody's dying, then what do you care if they smoke marijuana? It's not going to hurt you, and if it makes them feel better, then more power to them. And there's one thing that the Democrats and Republicans seemingly have not understood, and that is, why don't you just leave people alone and live and let live? I don't support any of that. I don't support the drug war. After I served as an undercover narcotics officer, I started questioning the drug war. And right after the IRS, the war on drugs is the second biggest farce this country has ever come up with. So I agree with Ron Paul on almost every issue that I've ever heard him talk about. And I really had a V8 moment where when I heard Ron Paul, I did that. I go, gosh, he's so right. Why didn't I think of that? When he said, I would abolish the IRS and the federal income tax and replace them with nothing. Okay? Because if the federal government and Congress stayed within their proper parameters, they wouldn't need all this money. They wouldn't need all this money to pay for all their corruption. And we're literally paying for our own demise. And we need to stop funding the criminal who's coming after us. One thing I wanted to say about the book is that every citizen should read this because your employee needs to know about it. And your employee that we're talking about here is the sheriff. But anybody else, the deputies, when you get this book, you should always get at least one or two others. Keep one for yourself and give one to your favorite deputy or your uncle that's a police officer or your sheriff. Take it to your sheriff and make sure he understands what you and your neighbors really want him to do. It all boils down to this. Sheriff, will you stand against tyranny? Can you imagine any sheriff saying no? No, tyranny's not my job. Standing against tyranny is not my job. How bad do things have to get in this country before your sheriff says enough is enough? The monster's knocking on the door. The monster of despotism and tyranny are destroying our country. And if there was ever a time in our country's history that we should be standing against tyranny, it's now. Sheriff, I'm asking you, will you do it? If you don't, the fate of our country is in that decision. If you stand and fight against tyranny, we win. Your citizens are protected and America continues. If you do not, America dies. Read the book and see where you can restore freedom and liberty in your county and keep the federal government in Washington, D.C. where they belong.